Welcome to the Disrupt Now podcast, episode 78.
What makes people excited is progress. You don't have to be at the goal yet to feel alive again. You have to be progress.
Just do right. Right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul.
What matters most is finding your inner purpose.
Welcome to the Disrupt Now podcast, created by Natalie Viglione. This podcast is designed to help humans embrace change, transform, and evolve. Natalie is a cycle breaker, truth seeker, a priestess and healer, teacher, and a guide. This podcast's intent is to live and breathe truth, find and connect with authentic stories, and help raise consciousness. The purpose is to heal and awaken humans, to help you live the life that you want to live, a life of freedom and purpose. This will provide you with the tools, tips, and techniques to help you embrace the fact that it's necessary to disrupt the status quo. Please join Natalie and her guests on the journey to move humanity to a much higher level of consciousness and create more mindful conversations for us to explore together.
Welcome back to another Disrupt Now podcast episode. I'm Natalie Viglione, your host, and today I have a beautiful guest that is going to go on a journey with me about rooting into your intuition. And I'm excited to introduce Mae Empson. And let me tell you a little bit about her. And then we're going to jump into who she is and talk about all of the great stuff that we have to unfold in this episode today. So Mae is an executive coach with a company that's called Marengo. And Marengo offers consumers a new way to connect with ICF credentialed coaches that's affordable and accessible. And they're also Columbia University certified coaches. And this is so not only consumers, but businesses as well. So we're blending all the worlds, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing because life and business are never separate. Never separate. Mae is a Columbia certified coach and MBA, and she helps design heart-led strategies for the contemporary woman who wants to live a life that is meaningful, sustainable, full of passion, and overall just live a more mindful career in life. And today we're really going to hone in on that intuition. So Mae, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being a guest on the show.
You're welcome. I am so excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, okay. So this little thing called intuition, that's a big topic, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think that a lot of people have this thought that intuition is really a woman thing, right? So I think we can probably break that down today. But first, let's talk about your journey and what brought you into this design of really blending mindfulness and this essence of spirituality and bringing that through business, because I share a similar story and I love it because I feel like this just needs to happen on every level in every business across the world right now.
Yes.
So what happened to you to make you go, okay, gotta bring it all in?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think for most of us, we start off in, our childhood, just trying to develop all these mechanisms for safety and for being very secure and well-loved, and like any good people pleaser, that's kind of what I had done. And I was such a good kid. And I never really rebelled. I never had any of that, kind of craziness. I don't know why, but I always seemed to have a bit of that level-headedness ever since I was a kid. My mom was actually a devout Buddhist. And, since I was a child, I just remember hearing a lot about, your intention matters more and the thoughts matter and that kindness is important, all of those kinds of things. So I kind of took to it naturally and I really absorbed it. And I had started meditating probably when I was a kid. And I just remember just being at the foot of my bed. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what mantras I was saying, but it just felt good. And I would, wish my hamster well, my grandparents, my mom. And I do think that, when we talk about spirituality, it gets rooted in like religion, and that turns a lot of people off depending on where they came from in their childhood, and whether they found it was really helpful or whether they actually found it was hurtful for them and their development. But for me, it was very helpful. It was a very light touch. It was very individual just to me. And there wasn't a lot of like ritual around it. Yeah. But as I went into the world and did all the achiever things, I remember coming back to my mom and saying like, what about making money? And how does that relate to all the things you're supposed to do with your life? If you're just a good person, why are we seeking money? And her response was just this whole very practical, like, money is the way the world works, and we are in this world, so we make money too. There was this, cultural conditioning that I had. I'm Asian American, first generation here, of, bridging the, you really need to earn your place, like over earn your place. It is definitely not secure. There's not like the sense of ease and flowiness that comes from, you're worthy just because you are, versus like, no, you got to prove it, and you got to be better, and you got to do better, and you got to try really hard. And I think that works really well for like the first part of your life to kind of get to that first level of success, right? Like any kind of fear-based mechanisms drive us, and we get really good results. But then you get to a point, which I did, where I started seeing a lot of signs of, hey, I was really interested in literature, and that was my thing. Like creative writing was my thing. I had won all these awards, but it wasn't real. It wasn't real work. And it was like, literally, you could do that in your, as a hobby, but you need to find a real job. And so that kind of, I would say, narrative was in my head, and I fought it, but I accepted it. I fought it and I accepted it. And obviously a lot of good things came out of my life from following this more traditional path. I, got my MBA at like an Ivy League university. I went to McKinsey, like a top tier consulting firm. But the whole time I remember there were all these points where I remember thinking, should I do my MBA or should I do psychology? Right. And like, or, well, hospitality, all these other interests that I had, like in wellness, in food, in travel, like so many. And it wasn't until I had a few wake up calls, and it was like through the deaths of several people close to me, one that was on my team, and I was there when her husband passed, and kind of saw the whole thing, and it just really shook me. And I think from then I was just like, I just had this incredible sense of urgency. Yeah. And I knew that I wasn't utilizing my gifts. I didn't even know what they were. I just knew I was, kind of feeling like I was not playing full out. I wasn't really, big in the world or taking lots of risks. I felt like I was hiding, and I felt like I had burned out, and I was trying to hide in jobs so people wouldn't really know what I was capable of. And so it's like this swing on this pendulum where it's like you got this fire and this drive and this energy and go, and then all of a sudden you get like burned out from it. So then you're afraid of anyone knowing that you have that because you didn't feel like things worked out. And then I realized, oh, I'm not doing my thing, and I need to figure that out. And that started this journey of literally figuring out what my next career would be. And I thought of lots of things, which many are still on the table. I do not believe, this is my philosophy, there's one happy ending, right? At all. But I do believe there might be something that's, the easiest thing, the most logical thing, where you have the most momentum right here, right now. Yeah. And I think then, we get an easier way to kind of decide which path to take. But mine ended up being coaching, realizing that I had this drive for like humans and caring about people. And I was in many jobs where, you know, you kind of had to hide that. And it was like unusual for me to be there. I was like the canary in the coal mine. And
that's a great analogy, by the way.
I was, and I would get so sick. There's so many things, right? So many reasons why when we don't live in the truth of who we are, it shows up in our body. It shows up in our relationships. And you can, you know, we talked a little bit about this before we jumped on to record, but we can be living like, and that was the thing, I was living a good life, but I wanted like great. And that's when it starts to rock the boat, because everyone understands, like, when you're just, everything's a mess and you're just trying to do your thing to get to like a good life. But people don't understand you as much when they're like, why are you trying to change things when things are pretty good? You should be really thankful for what you have. So, and that a lot of people, you know, when I coach with them, they say that they almost feel ashamed to have problems because they are doing better than most people. But you start to realize that it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how far you've come or what you've done. There's always another level where you are trying to figure the next thing out. And it's equally as painful as the first time you figured it out. So with all that being said, there were many times throughout my journey when I would just know things, or I would just read the energy, or I had this sense of this person before, you know, maybe we really interacted. I just kind of knew. And I remember coaching people that I was consulting with. I was like, you can't, you know, say these things about people. Like, people know what you think about them. They feel it, even if you don't say it. Right. And so it was this sense of like, I just knew that you can't be more than one person. It doesn't work well that way. You know, try to be the same person you are to every single person, and try to fix that if you don't feel good with that, not fix the people, or shift yourself. So anyways, with all that, I ended up coming into the side of having some like experiences with precognition, experiences with intuition. And there was just something there that sparked my curiosity, and I began diving into it more. And I firmly believe that we should follow our curiosities. There's something there when you pull that string, and it may not be like A to B, but the Z may be the thing you were looking for. And so when I coach people with career paths or journeys, they often are just like, can you just tell me the thing I'm supposed to do next? And then I'm sending them on this path to get to know themselves better and to get like firmly rooted in who they are. And they have no idea why that matters. But at the end of the day, they end up figuring out the thing that they ended up wanting because they know who they are. So that's how I got into intuition. And yeah, there's some crazy stuff that can happen there.
Yes. And we should probably talk about some of these crazy stuff, because I could totally reciprocate with similar experiences starting when I was very little, like really little. And these moments are so clear to me to this day. Like it's as if time has not passed. Now, some say, you know, time does not exist and that's whatever. So it's all happening at the same time. And it's like, it kind of makes sense sometimes in the way that I feel like so connected to that moment. Very weird. So I just want to say that I love this. And I love that you followed your intuition. You followed, I mean, it's like people say following your gut, you know, following this innate truth that, and I could totally, I mean, you're like living in, you know, New York City or whatever, you know, cities, whatever, just insert big city, and you're doing the thing, did the school, did the, you know, still, I don't know about you, I'm still paying off my school loan. I'll probably will be for the rest of my life, but I don't care. It's all good. But like all those things that stack up, and then, you know, that like, I remember this very specific moment where it was like my soul was on this path and I was over here physically. And I was like, holy shit, you know, this is all wrong. Like, did you have that moment of aha, like,
Yeah.
like that, you know, I mean, it's the physical sickness, it's that stress, it's this, like, you feel like you're just the weight of the world and you're just like, ugh. I remember having that vision of like, you're splitting away from your soul. So either you go pick it up and you align with it, or you start dividing and going on a path that may be okay, but it's not going to be yours. Kind of.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
For me, a lot of things come in threes.
It's a powerful number.
And yeah, I think I had 3 deaths that happened in the sequence of a few years that were the things that, like, one of the first time, you know, someone was like, well, when are you going to figure this out? And the second time it's like, well, what about this? And the third time I was like, okay, I got the message. And so I always believe that there's multiple chances. Like, you're never done. You're never like, I lost it.
You missed it.
Didn't do it in my 20s and now it's too late. And I don't think so. There's different ways to do it that might feel more safe to you now or might feel more aligned. But I do think that your intuition is always there for everyone. And it's actually really fun. It's like fun to practice listening to your intuition. It's fun to start to get a sense of, you know, what you thought versus what came to be. And I love how you can use it for practical things as well as, you know, what feels like, ooh, look, you know, my sign came from, you know, here and I saw it there. And then the time lines up and it's 111 on 111. And so there's like, I would say there's a whole spectrum. And I think depending on where you're grounded from, what language you like to use, you can talk about the neuroscience, you can talk about quantum physics, you talk about, like, you know, angels or, you know, readings. And I think there's something probably for everyone along that path. Or you could just say it is decision-making and focusing on, you know, making the best decision.
Right.
And so that's what I've been really trying to bridge, because I am safe for a lot of people because of the background that I've had. Yet I knew when I was in that place of like, oh my gosh, my soul's on fire, I'm dying, maybe even physically in these jobs, in these roles, I'm burning out, like my body's rejecting like work, like all the things, being super sick, or just feeling like I'm high, like all the things that really are probably not a sign of our best existence.
Absolutely.
And just also knowing that, like, I didn't know what to do. And I remember thinking, I wish I knew someone that kind of knew where I was coming from and wasn't like a fairy, you know, and was like, just give it all up and you have, you know, just do it, just jump and the universe is going to catch you. Because I was like, I have a husband who has no idea about all, like, is an atheist and firmly believes in, you know, science for these reasons and is very logical. I have a family, I have kids, right? Like mortgage, rent, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
To also take into account. So I just remember thinking, like, I need to, if I'm not that person, I don't know who would be. And not like that I was trying to be that person. It was literally just the questions that I had, the things that I was trying to figure out,
right?
Like how to make sense of all this other stuff that was more intuitive, while I was also working with lots of people who, you know, we never talk about that stuff, but it totally bridges. It totally bridges because I think energy is everything. Managing your energy is everything. Being aligned is everything. And you can call it intuition. You can call it, you know, strategy, whatever you want to call
it.
Vision, right? You can call it manifestation, but
abundance.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you'll catch different people who are like, oh, I like that, or I don't like that. And it's just kind of what we're triggered by or what we're not triggered by. So for some of us, it's like, we love to hear the word co-creation. I remember thinking to myself, what does it mean? What does it mean to co-create with the universe? This was like one of my early questions. I hear people just keep saying surrender. I hear people saying co-create. And I literally was like, can someone please explain to me what this is? And so then I came up with the definitions through my own experience. And that is also what intuition is. It's not just knowing because you think, it's knowing because you've experienced it. And so you have this, like, belief has legs, like a table, and it gets propped up by the last time that you thought this and it actually was true. The last time you kind of said the thing that you thought you should say, the last time you didn't say the thing, when you heard yourself being like, maybe just don't say that right now. Right. And then you start to be like, oh, that's what it feels like to kind of tap into knowing more about a situation than may seem possible in that moment.
Right. Right. And I think, your upbringing is beautiful, and because let's tap into that excellence of mindfulness, because it's that tool that allows us to kind of sit in this space, quiet, of solitude, of being with yourself, which I think that alone is one of the hardest feats for most people to even try to take on, which this should be a fundamental thing that's taught in our schools when we're little, because that changes everything, because you're able to tap into that knowing. You can hear it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're going like this and you're all over there and you're like busy and I'm like, I got it, and then you don't hear anything. Like, besides chaos, like, in your brain rattling around inside of it, right?
Yeah, I think of it as like, what are you plugging into?
Yeah.
Right. And what are you giving your energy into, as if you were this cord with lots of things and you're plugging into all of that and you're financing all of it with your energy. And there are things you want to do that with, right? Like maybe your relationships, you're like, got to keep that thing going. I want to be plugged in here. Or maybe to your vision or the baby that you're creating in this world, whether it's a physical thing or a human thing or a business idea.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And but then we don't realize sometimes we are plugged into other things too. Like the news sometimes is a huge source of anxiety for so many people. Like, PSA, do not listen to news in the evening. Do not look at the news. It will be there tomorrow morning. But like, I don't know how many people have come to me with like, I can't sleep. And then they're reading the news at night. And then when they stop, they realize they've been plugged into something that doesn't actually help them make any kind of decisions. And then you go, you just kind of go into this spiral. So yeah, I think there's this, the upbringing of realizing that like the internal world is powerful with thoughts. Obviously I think I was meant to be with my mom, right, who would teach these kind of things because I had this proclivity for it, right? There was this,
absolutely
not coincidence, I would say, around that. And I do think that that's why it made sense to me. And that's why I took to it. And I think that we all feel that way. Sometimes we hear something and we're just like, oh, like truth. Like we get the chills. We're just like, oh, that was good. We want to write it down. We want to like say it. We like listen to it again, read it again. But then we have to have that moment after where we like integrate it and we know it for us, because you can only get that high so often. Sometimes you go down that self-development path and you're just like hooked and you're just like, I want the next tidbit of truth and wisdom to drop and to drop.
Yep.
But sometimes we need to just like have it be a little quiet, tap back in and be like, well, what messages am I getting, about what I should do next? And that's like, so the way that I make it practical when I work with folks is I'll actually I've done this problem solving meditation for many years and it actually helps so much. Literally, it's like this idea that you've just got stuff on your mind and it's like that giant iceberg. And each day, you have some time to set aside and chip away at it. And every day, if you chip away a little bit and you have time to be like, I actually get to take care of things. I get to shift things. I get to rearrange things. You have a smaller and smaller and smaller set of, problems, right? Or stuff. And for people who aren't used to meditating, to sit by themselves very quietly with just like nothing is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It is like, they just want to stop because they're like, I can't not think anything. It's like boring. So I find like guided meditations are really helpful.
Yeah.
Feels very active for those of us who want to feel like we're doing something.
Yep.
And then they can actually get through something. And I do believe that when you tap in and you get still and you can quiet things a little bit, even just by focusing on something, it doesn't have to be literally like I get so still, nothing appears, but like the focus on the breath, or focus on an image, or focus on the words, or focus on a question. You forget that you actually may know the answer, and it like comes like this. Like it actually comes that quick. And there's so many other kinds of meditations to do at different points in your day to help you regulate, and to help you kind of, same thing. I think of it as like this mental hygiene. Like we go to the gym, we brush our teeth, right? We do all these things because there's like results that we get from it, right? You lift weights or you do stuff, and you should be like more tone, more muscle mass, like greater flexibility. And the same thing happens in our brain. Like when we actually run those neural pathways again and again and again, we route them somewhere else. And I remember hearing this definition of karma that always stuck with me, which I think is very practical. But karma is essentially like, if you think and do the same thing, you'll get the same thing. Yep. And we're like going down these routes, and we worn these grooves down over and over and over again. And it feels hard, but the hard work is just to be like, I'm not going down that path again. I'm literally going to be like, ooh, and shift that thought, shift that thinking to be like, what's the complete opposite? Like literally do something completely out of your routine, out of what, you normally would have done. Obviously, if it's something that you don't like in your life or you want to change.
Yep.
And then even just starting that, you're like, you're moving, and you're moving in a different direction. And that's what's happening in our brains, whether we realize it or not. But for so many folks, they need to know something's happening in their brains before they will let themselves approach a task, because they feel like, well, it's pointless, right? And so that's there are some people who are like, I'm so spiritual. They would just do it all day long, not even know what's going on or have the intention. Then there's others who would never want to do it unless they were completely, aligned with like the science behind it, and it makes total sense. And then, okay, maybe I'll do it. So yeah,
absolutely.
There's a lot of people out there.
Yeah. And what has really helped me too is when you're thinking about blending science and spirituality, because that's where the answers lie, because there's truth behind and the facts behind the reality of what meditation or alignment does for us. There's scientific proof. And so you can always, like, that's a beautiful thing about bridging these two worlds. And, you mentioned something that reminded me, like I've had to do a lot of meditating, but what I realized is, for me, like my form of meditation is always been running outside, getting by myself, now it's like hiking and just being with nature, because if I'm like walking, that act of walking and just moving and just, there's so many tools that we can do. We don't have to sit in this perfect, and go like this and go om, and, there's no rules.
No. And I remember it's like anything where you're like, what is the goal? Is the goal the doing of the thing, or is the goal the outcome?
Right.
Because you could, and obviously we've created these methods and these ways of doing it the same way you could create anything to make it look like something else. And so I remember when I was like with my first daughter and she was a newborn, I was like reading everything about like Zen and the art of motherhood, and like, how do I keep up some of these practices when I don't have like the same time that I did before? And I just remember reading something where they were just like, you don't, like, you got a baby. That is the thing. And so sometimes I think we're in this pursuit of the process instead of like who we want to become. And it's like, oh, I want to be a loving person. oh, then maybe tend to your child in a loving way. It's not about the hours of meditating you do, and then you react really inappropriately, obviously judgment wise, like for you inappropriately, because it doesn't matter. The most important thing is in that moment, are you attending to your thoughts? Are you aware of how you're feeling, what's triggering you and getting you stressed? Are you, aware that you have a choice? That is the biggest thing. And so I remember realizing like, it's everything you can do. And that's just like the art of living mindfully. And I think over the years, I've changed my goals so that things are so aligned and that it feels like if I live my life more beautifully, if I'm in love with my life even more, all the results come that I want. Everything is this byproduct of living more beautifully. And then I think you then become one person. It's easy for everything to add up. It doesn't matter what you do, it all works for you. And so moving meditations are so powerful. I remember just walking with the baby and just letting that be the thing.
Exactly.
Or even like before you talk to someone, like taking a breath and being like, okay, like having an intention of let me be present for whatever comes up. And, even prayer, right? Asking for guidance, asking for help can also be a form of tuning into the fact that we're these humans, we don't know it all, we might mess something up. So like, let me kind of be a little bit more engaged in this moment to try to like move it along well, instead of just engaging in automatic behaviors, which may not be as helpful.
Yeah. Or creates the chaos that we're trying to stay away from.
Yeah. And we're all human, right? I think sometimes people think there's like a place they get to where they shouldn't feel upset. Yeah. They should never yell. They never get angry. They never get frustrated. And they feel like a sense of failure if they're like, I was doing so well, Mae. And then this happened. And I'm just like, that's okay. We keep going through this. And, the choice is how you want to live. And like, not everyone wants to do this, right? They're just like, well, I just don't want to do these things. So it's like, that's fine. But if you're like, I want to do this, I want to try to change this behavior, I don't like the way I am behaving here. It's like, well, here's another opportunity, for you to open up that comfort zone even bigger and handle more. And those who can handle the most discomfort get the most success in life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that we try to turn ourselves into these robots of, I'm just so zen and everything is awesome. There's that Lego movie song, I always think about that. Everything is awesome. Okay. It's not everything is awesome all the time. In fact, I would say quite the reverse a lot, but it's like, how are we reacting? And if you need to explode and then go, I'm going to go be by myself for the next several hours. I will come back and I will be fine, because it's like you're just allowing ourselves to we got to keep those emotions flowing. It's like, if we try to stop this, it's like that stagnant river. It's that stagnant water that stinks and is, it starts to grow in, bacteria. And I totally agree. We got to keep that flowing. And I think that's like when you're talking about like you're in your career up to the point of change and transformation in it. I can before I started my company and got out of that corporate world myself, like I remember how many times I stopped myself from feeling and went into this mode of, fine, I am everything that is man and I do not feel as a woman, right? Like I am stoic and I am, like this. And it's like when you detach yourself from that, which I think this goes into the intuitive leadership component. And I love that, because we can't stop these emotions when we're working in a workplace. Like, no, that's not real, is it? Let's talk about that.
And so when I was at Columbia doing my certification, my coaching certification, part of it is to do research. So I did my research on spirituality in the workplace. And I remember having this moment again where I was just like, well, I was talking to a friend at dinner, and he teaches and was so interested in like this idea of research. He's like, oh, what are you doing? It's like, well, I think I'm going to do like career transitions. He was just like, oh, I'm like, I know. I'm like, it's what most people want to talk about, what they come to me for, all those things. I'm like, but I don't think I can do what I really want to do, right? Because Columbia is this very academic institution and all of that. And so he was just like, well, what do you really want to do? And so I said, I really want to do spirituality in the workplace. And he was just like, oh my gosh, I feel so lost sometimes. And it just went on, right? And so I talked to the faculty, was like, hey, I'm thinking about changing it. And it, of course, was like, that's amazing and great, and you should go for it. And all these people kind of started coming out of the woodworks, right? Like when you fly that flag, all of a sudden people are like, I'm interested in spirituality too. I need to talk to you afterwards. When I thought I'm going out on a limb here and there's no one else that resonates with this. And so I really think that when we aren't listening into our intuition, we're not tapping into a truth that is actually already there, that needs to be expressed. Because if you actually care about impacting the world, whether in small ways or big ways, you living your fullest expression of you and figuring out how to play this game called life while living it, not hurting 1,000 people in the process of you being like, I'm living me, but do it with grace and do it with finesse and do it so that you can adjust and adapt and still win no matter where you are, no matter who you're talking to. That, I think, is that intuitive leadership. And so when I did that research, there are 3 components. The first one of spirituality in the workplace, the first one is meaningful and purposeful work, which I think so many people resonate with, this idea like, I want to do something that I think is doing some kind of good in the world and has some kind of purpose, whether it's something I personally believe in or something that I think, everyone believes in. And the second piece is utilizing your gifts, feeling like, well, okay, I'm plugged into this thing that I think is like this great path and something I want to be plugged into, but I'm utilizing who I am in a way that lights me fully up and all the lights go on. And I'm really bringing myself to the table. And then the third part is a community, right? With like the support. And so I do think that, when you think about all those 3 things, none of them have religion in there or any kind of really woo-woo, like off-putting thing. They're really just the core of who people are. And that's why I think when you go back to intuitive leadership, it's really coming back to living a life based on values. It's feeling that you are making decisions based on values. It's not putting one thing in front of the other, but realizing that, the 4 parts, right? Like spirituality, achievement, earth energy being in your body, and then harmony is all about like all the pieces that it needs to have, that you need to have in order for you to really exist here. Because sometimes we get too much in our head and too much into this like dreamy place, and we don't do any of the things. And sometimes we're doing all the things and we forgot who we are, and that like the goalpost has completely moved and we've shifted, and our life is now, not the same as it used to be. So therefore we have to redefine what we're going after. Or we let our bodies just go to the wayside because we think we're robots or machines, or that, we can just like override a lot of things and it'll be there at the end of the day, in a month or 2, I'll take care of you. I'll be back for you. Don't worry. Right. And then for me, the harmony, the last part is like what really accelerates it. It's loving all parts of life. It's not rejecting when you have difficulties. Right. It's not saying that, I only take the good. It's by saying like, I take it all. Exactly. And I do it with a full heart. So maybe the things that a year ago you couldn't even be there, and it was too triggering, you're able to be there and you're able to show up and you do it willingly. And maybe you sacrifice something, but you know why you're doing it and it means something to you. And so that's how I think you then change the situation instead of having situations change you. Is when you can come that full circle back to the thing that scared the shit out of you and you're there for it. And you're like, I did it.
Exactly.
Like I overlapped it, right? I didn't have to run away.
Right.
I actually overcame this. And I think that is when we fully come into our power.
Yeah. Which I think is a really simple term for intuition, is power, tapping into an intelligent power that we all innately have and are just not allowed to most of the time. I mean, I definitely didn't grow up in a household that even that word did not exist. Right. But it showed up in my life. And I always felt like a complete alien and stranger. And that's how, when you start feeling those things, you really, especially when it's a precognitive clairvoyance, where for me is like it's my dreams. I dream about the future and the future comes to reality and I see it in my dreams. And only in the last couple of years, few years, have I been proud to stand by that and say, even on the Instagrams of the world, this is my gift. And I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. That's the other thing. Like we get too wrapped up in like what other people are thinking about us, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there is like anything in evolution, there's a period when it's not accepted and then a period when it just becomes the norm. Yeah. And I think that the same thing is going to happen with energy work, with intuition in these ways, like all of that. Like we believe what we believe until enough changes to prove otherwise. But that doesn't have to be you. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be all these other people. So I think we get to decide, well, what kind of life do we want to live?
Exactly.
Do I care about everyone supporting this, or do I care that I'm serving people, or that there are people that this helps, or that it helps me, right? And it's almost like, what if you just did it and no one knew about it and it worked, and then you were like, oh, by the way, that was like this whole thing. They'd be like, oh my goodness, right? So it's like, I think of it sometimes like that. There is like, when I started doing like Akashic record readings and all of that, I remember being like, is this gonna work? Is this gonna show up? Right? There's no predictability in a way in all these things. Like you're not like, okay, I do X, Y, and Z, and then like this, but and I think when you do start to lean into intuition more, there is a fear because it's a loss of control of what is going to show up and how it's going to happen. It's not like there's not a process that's happening, but it's that you don't see it or know it in a different way. And I think that's what scares people a lot sometimes from it. Other people, they're like, yeah, it's always been happening my entire life. I don't even know how to live not having it. And other people want to deepen their intuition. They don't even know where to start because they've lost a lot of sense of trust in themselves and the decisions that they make. And so I do think that intuition can be like stronger when you've developed it well over the years, like any kind of skill where you look at both sides, where you ask questions about it, where you try to like be curious. And then also try it. Some people are like, well, they're interested, but they wouldn't ever try to see if it works. They think like you just have this special gift that no one else does. And maybe, you've done it longer or you've had more time working with it. But I do think that everyone has the capability to feel energy, to see the answers, to know what to do next, and to kind of create something tangible from something that's very intangible.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like our unique gifts that we're giving to the world. It's this, we have unique psychic gifts that we can give to the world, and everybody's gift may show up differently. There's people that I mean, I've learned the crazy things that I've learned about in the past year has been like, holy shit, like I didn't even know that existed. Like, I mean, you can get like ridding people of entities that are like trapped in their energy fields and their bodies, and how frequencies can heal, and so it's like we all can tap into these different modalities of these abilities. And I agree with you that I think we're on the precipice of a time where humans are going to be able to fully realize and rediscover all of these things. And how amazing is that going to be? Because it helps in every facet of your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Like I think of it as, why not try it? Like, It doesn't cost you anything. I mean, maybe it costs you to go do some work or to study or to get some kind of certification or do something.
Right.
But like when, I ask people kind of like, when was the last time you listened to your intuition, or what does it feel like? Or what does it hit? That doesn't cost you anything to hear a message. It doesn't cost you anything to know. It doesn't cost you anything except maybe a belief that it's not real, or maybe a belief that you think it's silly, or, that you don't want to be silly. Like, it's like setting goals. It's like anything where, you either don't like saying things before they're happening because you want to know for sure 100% that it's true, or you like to do that because you don't feel it costs you anything. Right. To do these things. So I do think that if we can approach all of these things with a level of lightness, that's what I found works best with intuition, is when you don't put pressure on it, right? When you lean in first, you do every single thing as if there was no magical powers that were coming to help you. You were like, I'm here for it. I'm doing my part. I'm doing everything I know to do. And I'm, and maybe I haven't done it all, but I'm trying and I'm trying and I'm trying. And then the world fills in with all these beautiful, unexpected things. And that's, I think, always the key. It's unexpected and it's profound when it appears. Of course, precognition is different. And co-creation is different, right, than precognition. But I do think that same thing, when you go into any kind of precognition and are like trying to force an outcome, you got to be really careful about what you think is happening here, because you're like, am I seeding the thing and creating the thing, which isn't wrong, but it's not like you're open to really anything that comes through. And I think when you're really trying to do energy work and reading, you have to be really open.
Totally.
Without like this one thing that we want, which is why like doing a lot of the inner work helps with all of these things. Exactly. Right? To kind of just be like, oh, I'm like, when I'm really feeling this way, probably not a good time to be like, let's make a decision, like I'm going to do this. And it's like, probably not the best place for you to tap into your intuition. And it doesn't feel like fear, right? Intuition doesn't feel fear-based. It doesn't feel like you're wrong. It usually will tell you what to do for the highest good for all. And I think if you prompt yourself with the right kind of questions, like what is for the highest good of all, or what can I do next? What would be most helpful? Instead of, is this going to happen the way I thought? Am I going to make this much money this month? Is this person the love of my life? Like these yes, no questions tend to trip us up. And so I prefer to work with open-ended questions whenever I do any kind of intuitive work.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we often forget that whatever you want to call it, universe gives often what we need, not what we want. And they can be very different things. And we can look back and go, oh, oh, that's why that happened. Like it's that hindsight is 2020 is a saying for a reason. Because we understand
that. Yeah. There's this, a thing where I'm always like, if it doesn't make sense, it's because it's not the end of it yet. Like if it feels confusing, it's for a reason. It's so that you can start to have some clarity. If it feels confusing, it's because you're trying to do something you've never done before, which you don't know how to do. Literally, there's no like neural pathway connecting point A to point B to C, which is why your brain's just like, I don't know which way to go. And so I think normalizing these feelings of not knowing, of confusion, is actually helpful, because
It is.
if you get past it, then you keep going. But a lot of times we feel confused. We're like, I don't know what else to do in my life. And that's it. Instead of being like, so I should figure out, I should
let me go play with this.
Yeah. Let me talk to someone. Let me, do something new or different, or break my routine in some way, shape, or form. Like, I always think those things are just good for us to do, because
Totally.
like anything, we get wired and then we just keep doing the thing. And then one day we take like, we do something and like 1 hour earlier, we're like, whoa, that felt like life changing, right? Or we took a walk when normally we would have sat, and we're like, this is the best thing ever. But I don't think it ends, because then we say, well, no, the walk is the thing. The walk is the thing. I have to always take the walk. And it's like, no, that was like what happened to work then. Like, you got to keep figuring out the next thing.
Exactly.
So I think that feeling of like, but I thought I did that hard work and I got there. Why is it hard again? And it's like, oh, this is life.
Right.
For real.
It's process of evolution. And that's kind of, again, I think the perfect thing here is thinking about a flowing river, just, going kind of, you're just moving forward. You keep moving, you're going to hit rocks, you're going to hit, you have to change directions, but you're not stagnant.
Yeah.
Because that's death. Death is being stagnant is death. And we don't want that. We want flowing rivers of life and vivaciousness.
Right. The only people, right, that don't have problems are those who are not alive. I remember telling this to my kids, which I don't know if they'll remember. But, one of my daughters was having trouble sleeping. I know, Mike, if I remembered, having trouble sleeping. And I remember saying to her, like, what is your body saying? Right? Like, listen to your body. And then she's like, okay, can we go over it again? Like, what my body's saying? It's like, okay, I get it. Sometimes you need to borrow some beliefs until you got your own. But I was trying to help her realize that, like, the mind sometimes goes like this, but like the body's a whole different place for intuition too. So much is in our body as well. And so for her, it was to kind of realize, like, it's easy to fall asleep. Your body wants to relax. Your body feels tired. Your body's telling you, like, you're loved, you're supported, right? You're safe, and that it's natural for you to go to sleep. Versus it's hard. I can't do it. It never works for me. Like, it always happens like this. And we have that kind of inner critic, whatever voice happening in whatever areas of our life that aren't working. And so sometimes when you tap into your intuition, it actually will help you break free of that pattern of thinking. It'll interrupt that story,
right,
and allow us to, if we're willing, which is the key part, if we're willing, it will allow us to change, how we react to something, because we're like, why is this a problem? Not a problem. Oh, okay. Because of this.
Yeah.
But I have to be willing to let it go. I have to be willing to shift. I have to be willing to change. So I think that, like, we have to all get to a place where we feel like we're seen, we're heard, our feelings are out, before we can get to a place where we're, like, willing to shift and willing to kind of do the work of the next step.
Yep. Exactly. Which is where this work starts. And I think that's why, your work and your genius that you're bringing to the table is blending these worlds, because that really makes a more powerful workplace. It makes a more powerful home base in it doesn't matter what that looks like. It's just like, again, meshing things together that just should have never been divided and separated, because it's really, I think it's caused us humans a lot of strife, like unnecessary strife, So we have, Mae, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom today. And I want to tell everyone that, so Blaire Fernandez, the CEO of Marengo, was on a previous episode, and we talked about the lovely gift that she's providing for all of the Disrupt Now audience. So if you love Mae and her approach, and you have a business or even just in your life and you need some guidance, like I take us up on this offer, because this is a really great way to connect into coaches that you're getting to know, like where your root, where you come from, because that's really important. So if you decide that you want to work with Mae, we're going to have all the information in the write-up, and we're offering $100 off of your first month with Marengo. So Disrupt Now, that's for you. It's all for you guys, because now is the time. Tap into that heart, tap into the wisdom. But Mae, do you want to leave everyone with just one little thing before we close out today?
Yeah, I think it's ask yourself the question, where am I not fully showing up in my power?
Yes.
And what is it costing me? Right? What is it costing me? And I think that from there, your intuition will kick in and it will respond, and you will have a plethora of ideas for the ways that you think you want life to be, and the ways that you want to create your life, and the ways that you do want to design. And then I think that, from that energy, the things will start to unfold just from that one question and that first step of even feeling that. Things will change.
Agreed.
Thank you so much for having me on, Natalie.
You're welcome.
For, all the work that you've been doing, because we all know that it is not easy doing all this work in the world, and we do it because we think it actually serves people, right? Who have maybe walked the same paths we have walked before. And
exactly.
When you take those kind of challenges and create something beautiful with it, it's such a gift. So thank you.
It is. Yes. Well, thank you as well. And I can't wait to talk more about your Akashic Records readings, because I love it. So maybe that's another episode in the future that we need to talk about.
That's right. We'll go there. We'll go there.
Thank you, Mae. Thank you, everyone, for listening today.
All right.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. And please, in the meantime, if you know anyone or you want to pitch your story, please get in touch with us at disruptnowprogram.com, or you can get in touch with me on Instagram at disruptwithnatalie. Of course, all the information is on our website. Again, thank you. And in the meantime, remember, no status quo.